Responding to the latest Pyongyang-Moscow military deal, South Korea's top office says it'll reconsider its non-lethal aid policy for Ukraine. Putin hit back, saying it would be a, quote, big mistake. Responding to a group of North Korean defectors in the south sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets over the border last night, North Korea's Yo-jong hints that another batch of trash balloons could be sent to the south. Doctors at Seoul Nat'l University hospitals have decided to end their walkout that began early this week as concerns grow over patient suffering. It's June 21st, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yo-jong. The presidential office here have signaled a potential shift in its policy regarding weapons provision for Ukraine in response to the recent North Korea-Russia military assistance agreement. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young starts us off.
South Korea's measures to potentially send weapon support to Ukraine will depend on Russia's attitude. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol's office Friday, a day after Seoul announced it will reconsider its policy of sending non-lethal aid to Kyiv as North Korea and Russia signed a treaty on military and economic cooperation. Yoon's office said a variety of measures could be considered for supporting Ukraine with weapons, with specific measures to be reviewed depending on how the Kremlin responds to Seoul's position on recent developments. National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin on Thursday delivered the South Korean government's stance after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed they would provide one another with military and other assistance in the event of aggression, with all means at disposal without delay. Condemning the pact, Chang says he sees any form of cooperation that provides direct or indirect support towards building up North Korea's military as a violation of United Nations Security Council sanctions.
Especially as a permanent member of the UN Security Council that led sanctions against North Korea, Russia's violation of its resolutions by supporting North Korea threatens our security and will inevitably harm Seoul-Moscow relations.
Since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine in 2022, South Korea has maintained a policy of providing only humanitarian aid and non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. Chang says the government will now reconsider that policy. Seoul also plans to strengthen its sanctions regime, targeting 243 new subjects, including 4 Russian ships, 5 organizations, and 8 North Korean individuals involved in weapons and oil exchanges between the two sides. Chang said the measures were decided after a review of Pyongyang and Moscow's Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Pact released on Thursday morning, but noted all specific details had not yet fully been grasped. While the North Korean leader declared the treaty raises their partnership to an alliance, the Russian president's more subdued remarks suggest otherwise. The treaty's controversial Article 4 on mutual assistance refers to their respective domestic laws and Article 51 of the UN Charter that recognizes a state's right to self-defense. This suggests the current pact may not trigger an immediate allied intervention as a mutual defense treaty would, according to a senior official. In any case, Seoul says it will firmly respond to any actions that threaten its national security and further reinforce the South Korea-US alliance and their trilateral cooperation with Japan to neutralize North Korea's nuclear missile threats. Meanwhile, the US State Department on Thursday said it welcomes any support to Ukraine in fighting Russia's aggression, but the question of supplying weapons is each country's decision to make. Washington also expressed deep concern over Putin's threat to supply Pyongyang with weapons as a response to support for Kyiv, warning that such a move would destabilize the Korean peninsula. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
This afternoon, Seoul's foreign ministry called in a senior Russian official to protest against the new defense pact between North Korea and Russia. First, Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-kyun called in Georgy Zinoviev, the Russian ambassador to South Korea, to explain the government's stance on the matter. He emphasized that the military assistance agreement between Russia and North Korea could worsen Seoul-Moscow diplomatic relations and called on Russia to act responsibly. Meanwhile, Russia's Vladimir Putin claims any shipment of lethal weapons to Ukraine by South Korea would be, quote, a big mistake. Cho Soo-young covers his remarks.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that it will be a very big mistake if South Korea provides lethal weapons to Ukraine and that Russia will respond if it does. According to TASS and Sputnik news agencies, President Putin made this statement during a press conference in Hanoi, Vietnam on Thursday as he concluded his tour of North Korea and Vietnam. On the same day, South Korea's presidential office said it would reconsider the issue of providing weapons to Ukraine, criticizing the treaty and the comprehensive strategic partnership signed between North Korea and Russia. So far, the South Korean government has maintained a principle of not supplying lethal weapons to Ukraine. Regarding the Northern Russia signing the treaty, Putin said there's nothing new compared to the ones signed in the 1960s and that South Korea does not need to worry as the military assistance only applies when either one is attacked. Putin also mentioned that Moscow has not asked Pyongyang for any support for a special military operation in Ukraine. However, he added that Russia is currently monitoring the situation as Ukraine's attacks on the border area of Belgorod with Western long-range weapons are considered an invasion. He also said that Moscow does not rule out providing Pyongyang with high-precision weapons in response to Western countries providing weapons to Ukraine. The Russian president said that while the crisis on the Korean peninsula is heating up, he hopes the treaty with North Korea and Russia will have some deterrent effect. Cho Soo-young, Arirang News.
A North Korean defectors group sent additional anti-Pyongyang leaflets to North Korea on a Thursday night, against which North Korea's Kim Yo-jong hinted that more trash balloons could be sent to the south. Meanwhile, troops from North Korea have crossed the inter-Korean border yet again. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung with this report.
North Korea has hinted at sending another round of trash-carrying balloons to the south in response to the delivery of anti-Pyongyang leaflets by North Korean defectors the day before. In a statement released by the regime's Korean Central News Agency on Friday, North Korean leader Sister Kim Yo-jong noted that dirty toilet paper and other items were sent over the border to the north. She said that the North Korean defectors group in South Korea has done something it was told not to do, warning that things that don't need to be done will happen. On Thursday night, Fighters for a Free North Korea, an activist group comprised of North Korean defectors, sent 20 large balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets, USB drives containing South Korean drama and music, as well as $1 bills across the border. The head of the group said the deliveries would continue until North Korean leader Kim Jong-un apologizes for sending filth balloons to the south. North Korea recently launched around 1,000 balloons across the border in retaliation to the sending of anti-Pyongyang leaflets. Tensions near the inter-Korean border continue to intensify as troops from North Korea once again intruded over the military demarcation line. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff on Friday, several soldiers from the north crossed the border at around 11 a.m. the day before. They immediately returned north after the South Korean military fired warning shots and aired warning messages. It's already the third crossing this month, with a similar intrusion on Tuesday and another around 2 weeks ago, when 20 to 30 troops appeared to get lost while digging soil and clearing wasteland in the DMZ. South Korea says Thursday's border crossing appears to have been accidental, as was the case in both previous instances. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the long and drawn-out medical dispute. Medical professors at one of the Big Five hospitals decided to end their walkout that began early this week amid growing patient suffering. This decision will likely affect others too. An Sung-jin brings us the latest.
The tug-of-war between the government and the medical community continues. Opposing the government's plan to expand the medical school quota, medical professors at Seoul Nat'l University Hospital and its affiliate hospital began an indefinite walkout on Monday. However, the emergency committee from the hospital announced on Friday that it would end the walkout and resume medical services, with more than 73% of professors in favor of doing so. Instead, it was suggested that they should take part in a more sustainable protest, such as by monitoring policy formation and offering suggestions. However, the Emergency Committee of Medical Professors at Seongjonggan University, which comprises of professors from Samsung Medical Center, will hold a meeting on Tuesday next week to discuss whether to suspend medical services indefinitely. Meanwhile, with the drop in medical services, which has lasted for months, patients are growing more and more concerned. The Korea Alliance of Patients Organization and Union of Korea Breast Cancer Patients are set to hold a rally at the beginning of July calling for the withdrawal of doctors' collective action, as well as the creation of preventive laws for medical service suspension and walkouts. This may become the largest rally involving patients, with more than 1,000 people expected to gather outside Posinggakbeol Pavilion in central Seoul. The Korean Health and Medical Workers Union also announced that if medical services are not normalized by the end of this month, they will launch an all-out protest. The union plans to hold a joint meeting with the board members of more than 200 medical institutions nationwide on the 27th to discuss further measures to resolve the medical dispute. It stated that healthcare workers had endured enough and is urging the government and the medical community to engage in proactive dialogue. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports during the first 20 days of June saw an on-year increase amid strong shipments of chips. According to the Korea Customs Service on Friday, the value of exports during that period exceeded $35.7 billion, up some 8%. By item, semiconductor exports increased by over 50% compared to a year ago. But the amount in overall imports dropped by 0.6% year-on-year to around $34 billion. That resulted in a trade surplus of over $1.5 billion. The government and ruling People Power Party have decided to purchase 50,000 tons of surplus rice from farmers to stabilize falling prices. The PPP's chief policymaker, Yo-jong said on Friday that to address the issue of 150,000 tons of surplus rice produced last year, the government will cut rice production by 50,000 tons this year by reducing the area available for cultivation. He added that the amount bought from last year's stock will be used for global food assistance. To support farmers' income, it plans to raise the budget subsidies paid to them to leave rice paddies fallow to a combined 5 trillion Korean won, or around $3.6 billion. The country is struggling with a low fertility rate despite more budget to tackle the demographic crisis. In line with the central government's efforts to tackle this chronic issue, local governments have their own measures to encourage young people to find love and get married. Kim Bo-young shows us more.
A demographic national emergency. Those are the words President Yoon Suk-yeol used recently to describe South Korea's low birth rate crisis. Despite the government's astronomical budget to tackle the low birth rate, the total fertility rate, the average number of expected births from a woman in her lifetime, dropped to an all-time low of 0.72 in 2023. Along with the central government's efforts to encourage people to start families, local governments too are making all-out efforts, coming up with their own ways of addressing the birth rate in their regions. One of them is Hyeongnam City, whose own mayor has become a matchmaker. Dubbed Solomon's Choice, a mass blind date program is being hosted by the city's government to help young people meet each other in a more natural way.
Even if young people are even considering marrying, they are too busy working and cannot actively seek chances to go out to find love. The local government's way of selecting people to join the program is fair and trustworthy, so a lot of participants seem to have trust in us.
The matchmaking program that started last year has already helped to make more than 100 couples, with one of the couples set to get married. That couple was introduced through the program in November last year and will become newlyweds in July. The groom-to-be had no hesitations about recommending the program to others.
On a one-on-one blind date, there is pressure on the guy to lead the conversation. But here, all participants arrive with the intention of actively seeking a match, so they all actively speak. Also, even if you are not into one, you can talk to another person right away, so there are more chances.
Though forming such an atmosphere for people to find love and marry might seem like a limited measure to beat the demographic crisis, an expert says it is necessary.
Against population crisis, local governments have been desperate in hosting additional and new population recently. And there are several ways to do that. First, hosting new public organizations. Second, hosting private companies. And third, promoting marriage. One common reason for not getting married will be not finding a suitable partner.
Once you find your destiny, you need to marry, which is, again, not simple. According to Statistics Korea, people in their 20s and 30s said not having enough money was the top reason for not marrying. Most of the pressure comes from buying a house, but the money needed for a wedding is also a burden. Private matchmaking company Gov't says the average cost for a wedding preparation, excluding a house, is around $45,000. What's worse is that businesses associated with weddings, including wedding halls and dress and makeup shops, do not have set prices, nor do they clearly disclose costs, making it even harder for uninformed couples. Seoul City's solution was opening public facilities for couples to use for weddings to lessen their burden.
This beautiful hanok is actually a complex cultural space promoting Oriental medicine. But it was transformed into a wedding hall for the day so a couple could have a cost-effective wedding.
Mr. Park and his bride chose this venue through the city's public wedding hall program, which is opening up a total of 28 venues for weddings. The program began during the pandemic as wedding halls closed their doors and wedding hall rental prices surged. The biggest advantage of renting public facilities is that they are cheap comparatively, and prices are transparent.
Many people choose usual wedding halls. We wanted to have a memorable, meaningful event for guests, so we chose this venue through the program. We were able to check the price transparently because they showed us the estimate and contract in detail.
Seoul City aims to expand the program, making it much cheaper for couples.
Couples prefer outdoor weddings, especially in a hanok, followed by parks and museums. We're going to have more of these venues so that more couples can easily make a reservation. In terms of the cost, the rental fee goes up to $860, but we have revised the related ordinance to make it free, starting later this year.
Such measures are seemingly better than nothing at all. However, an expert added that what was of the utmost importance was to tackle core issues.
The most important necessities for young people who want to marry is to have a house, jobs, and the money needed to raise children. Local governments need to come up with detailed benefits such as houses specially allocated for newlyweds, so that they can plan their life, marry, and have a child.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Gyeongju has been recommended as the host city for the 2025 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the APEC Summit Selection Committee decided on Thursday to put forward Gyeongju as the venue for the summit ahead of its rivals Incheon and Jeju Island, citing the city's excellence across multiple areas, including cultural resources. The committee sent its recommendation on to the preparatory committee, which will finalize the decision later this month. The city's local government said on Friday that it expects the summit will have over 6,000 participants, including heads of state and global leaders. This will be the first time for Korea to host an APEC summit in 20 years, following Busan in 2005. On the international front, deadly heat waves are sweeping across the Northern Hemisphere, killing hundreds of people in India and more than 1,000 in Saudi Arabia during the annual pilgrimage to Mecca. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
According to a health ministry official from India on Tuesday, a severe heat wave across India has killed hundreds of people since March, primarily due to heat stroke as temperatures soared to 50 degrees Celsius. An Indian non-profit organization reported that as many as 192 homeless people died in New Delhi, the highest number of deaths from extreme temperatures since 2019. Tuesday night saw 35.2 degrees Celsius, the highest overnight temperature in 55 years.
In the last 2 days, we have had 22 patients with heat wave-related illnesses. Of the 22, 5 people have died due to suspected heat stroke.
In Saudi Arabia, the death toll from the sweltering heat during the annual Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca rose to more than 1,000 this year, with more than half of them being unregistered pilgrims. According to AFP, 1,081 people from 10 countries, including Egypt and Pakistan, died during the annual pilgrimage this month, mostly due to heat stroke. There are concerns that the death toll will rise as there are lots of missing people, on top of the almost 3,000 people hospitalized with heat-related conditions. Over in Europe, countries including Italy, Serbia, and Romania are seeing daytime temperatures of almost 40 degrees Celsius, with the authorities warning people not to go outside and halting work on construction sites. Moving further east into Russia, one person died and several others were injured in Moscow on Thursday due to a heavy rainstorm. The Russian capital has also seen much warmer weather than on average, with sudden changes in the weather causing serious damage and injuries. 차윤경, Arirang News.
Summer heat of higher than 30 degrees continued everywhere today. UV rays and ozone levels are also high due to strong sunlight. It's easy to get heat-related illnesses in weather like this. Please refrain from excessive activities in the middle of the day. During the weekend, it will be rainy starting with Jeju Island. Until Sunday, rain of up to 200 millimeters is forecast on Jeju Island. The southern coast will have about 150 millimeters. Except for Seoul, there will be 5 to 60 millimeters of rain in all parts of the central region. Tomorrow, most areas will start the morning at least 20 degrees. It will move up to 29 in Seoul, Chuncheon, and Jeju. Daejeon and Gyeongju, 28 degrees. This rain will ease the heat wave a bit, but it will still feel hot due to high humidity. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session coming up.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Happy Friday. Welcome to Within the Frame. Korean directors, movies, and actors are going global as they venture into prestigious world stages, including Hollywood. For this topic, we are joined by Jason Vecheries, film critic and professor at Gyeongju University. Jason, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, as always.
Always a pleasure. Also joining us is film critic Piers Conran. Good to see you, Piers.
Good to see you too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. At first, Jason, director Yeon Sang-ho, best known for his blockbuster thriller Train to Busan. He is slated to helm the TriStar's Pictures 35th Street, partnering with Leonardo DiCaprio. Give us more detail about this movie and also about the significance of director Yeon's Hollywood debut.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with Yeon Sang-ho. There's a lot of news around his new works this week. So yeah, he's collaborating with Leonardo DiCaprio, his production company, and it's really exciting. I mean, there's not much in the way of details regarding this new project, but I think it does underscore how Korean directors are now, working with, Hollywood A-list, directors and actors on various projects. He's also working on a project called Revelations, which is going to be with Alfonso Cuarón as attached as an executive producer. So that's really exciting. That'll be a film, that's a Netflix film starring Yo-jong. So yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot more films, more projects with Korean film directors, writing, producing, directing, and we've got, Hollywood big names also working or collaborating with them. And I think that's just, another stage in, I guess, the internationalization of Korean cinema. It's happened in various stages over the years, but I think we're seeing it, kind of almost accelerated over recent years with the explosion in Korean content.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. All right, Piers. Director Yeon has earned wide acclaim here in Korea for his unique and distinctive storylines, as shown in his Netflix series like Hellbound, The Bequeath, and Parasite the Grey. How does Hollywood view Yeon and his work?
Well, I think that compared to some other very commercial, popular Korean filmmakers, Yeon Sang-ho has sort of a more globally accessible sensibility. He mixes very kind of pulpy thrills, kind of genre-driven works, and they often include pretty universal social messages. So there's a bit less melodrama in his work, and I think that makes his work kind of more accessible, particularly to in the Western mindset. So people do kind of gravitate towards that. I recall when Train to Busan premiered at Cannes, I was lucky to be in Cannes that year, and I was working for a Hollywood production company then. And then they contacted me saying that they had friends from the big U.S. agencies who had seen Train to Busan and wanted to get in touch with Yeon Sang-ho and sign him. And there was this whole spree, and I met all these agents for coffee, and they all wanted to meet Yeon Sang-ho, or rather meet his reps, and try and sign him. In the end, it was a United Talent Agency, UTA, that signed him, and so now they're kind of they're the people who are responsible, I suppose, for bringing in these big kind of interesting Hollywood projects. And we'll see, of course, how many of these really get made, because a lot of things get announced, a lot of very exciting things get announced, and it's not always so easy for them to kind of get over the finish line.
Yeah, I agree that he has very unique style, and that's what is making him famous. All right, Jason. Korean sci-fi black comedy Save the Green Planet and director Park Chan-wook's Old Boy are set for English language Hollywood remakes. What updates do we have on their development so far?
Yeah, this is really exciting. I mean, when you talk about Korean remakes of Korean films in Hollywood, I think, there are a lot of examples, not least Old Boy, that clearly haven't worked, have been critical flops. But yeah, this Save the Green Planet remake it sounds really intriguing. It's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, famous for films such as Poor Things, featuring Academy Award winner Emma Stone, who's actually going to star in this new film that is going to be shot in the UK and the US over the summer, I believe. Yeah, I mean, I think his style is kind of eccentric style. I think is well matched for a Save the Green Planet remake. I mean, the film, of course, directed by Jang Jun-won, it was released in 2003, just a really kind of iconic Korean film. It didn't work in cinemas then, but it has built this, audience since. It's becoming kind of like a cult classic. And I think that potentially could be, a very, very interesting film. And then we've got this Old Boy series, which is a Lionsgate drama. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. I mean, we do have Snowpiercer that was also made as a series, which wasn't too bad. I mean, it wasn't, I quite like the second season, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Spike Lee's Old Boy remake was a disaster. So let's hope there's not a repeat of that. But, kind of going back to, an earlier point I made about kind of the internationalization of Korean cinema, and we're seeing, more and more kind of talent, global talent working with, Korean directors or, IP. And I think it's, it's an interesting direction this is all heading.
Also, Jason, again, what significance do Save the Planet and Old Boy Hollywood remakes mean to the Korean cinema?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly further exposure for the industry as a whole. I mean, people will check out the original film, and I really do hope so. But I think, as I said, I think we're seeing we're seeing more and more content out there that's being searched out by Hollywood producers. I mean, remakes are announced all the time. There's like 20 years of announcements of remakes of Korean films, Bittersweet Life, and there's a whole number of them that have never actually materialized. But it does seem that Save the Green Planet is happening. That will be released, and that's very exciting, and that's going to generate even further attention. I mean, the studio behind it as well. I mean, it's CJ Entertainment, or CJ E&M, and they are focusing more on international projects these days, less so on the Korean projects, and that's where the industry is heading. It's become internationalized. It's global. And so
expanding the market.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the Korean market's been saturated for some time, so they've been looking at kind of global projects. I mean, talking about Snowpiercer back in 2013, they saw the potential for projects overseas, clearly in the United States, but also other parts of Asia. And I think that's just another part of it. And yeah, I think there's potential here for this remake to do very, very well, but we'll have to wait and see.
And Piers, meanwhile, K movies continue to gain traction at International Film Festival, with Harbin starring Hyunbin securing an invitation from the Toronto International Film Festival. What factors do you believe contributed to the film's selection?
Well, the film is in the gala section, which is reserved for bigger titles, splashy titles that have people that are worth putting on the red carpet. And so I do think the film's pedigree is to some degree responsible for its selection. You have Hyunbin, as you've mentioned, being the star of the film. He's a huge global star, especially following the success of Crash Landing on You. And so I imagine the Toronto would be very happy to have him grace the red carpet. Director Woo Min-ho also has some pedigree. He made the wonderful thriller Inside Men, which was very well seen around the world, a big hit here in Korea. And he also made the historical drama The Man Standing Next, which a few years ago was picked as the official Korean entry for the Best International Film Award at the Oscars, at the Academy Awards. But also there's a fact that it didn't go to the Cannes Film Festival. And since the film has been ready for quite some time, I'm pretty confident they submitted and it wasn't taken, which meant it was available for a fall festival selection, as they say. But that said, a selection at TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival, is generally a pretty good indicator of quality. I mean, the Korean films that screen there tend to be pretty good ones. And so, and as it happens, I've been hearing some pretty positive things within the industry about Harbin. So that's encouraging, and I'm certainly looking forward to the film. But when you hear things within the industry like that, always best to take those with a little grain of salt.
And staying with you, Piers, tell us more about the Toronto Film Fest gala presentations where Harbin will premiere, and do you think the film's participation in the festival will facilitate greater penetration of Korean cinema into the North American markets?
Well, I think that certainly the gala section at Toronto, you typically have a couple of Korean films screened there. This is not a rare occurrence at all, which is great. And it's more about kind of keeping the pressure on. As long as there are interesting Korean films to screen there, it always shows that, you know, Korea is a consistent presence in the gala section at Toronto. That's very good. But as a promotional platform, I'm not sure how useful TIFF is for Korean films. It is useful, but it's nothing like something like Cannes, because Toronto is really geared towards Hollywood. It's really a promotional platform for North American films, particularly films that are launching into their, hoping to launch into an awards race, so, you know, ultimately culminating in the Academy Awards early the following year. So Cannes, which is far more international and is not connected to the Academy Awards the same way, is a much better platform for Korean films. I mean, if you look at last year, there were a few Korean films there. The gala selections last year were a recent one, Smugglers, which was a big hit in Korea, but didn't really wasn't a big deal outside of Korea, unfortunately. And then you have Hojino's A Normal Family, which was a good film, which still hasn't been released anywhere. It's been to a couple of festivals since then.
All right, Jason. Son Seok-gu's short thriller Night Fishing has been invited to the International Short Film competition at the Fantasia International Film Festival. And we hear that Night Fishing is garnering global attention for aspects that diverge from norms, traditional cinema norms.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I mean, Son Seok-gu is obviously a big, you know, actor in Korea, but clearly he's quite interested in various different projects and working not just as an actor, but working, you know, behind the camera as well. And here he's collaborating with Byung-gong, and he's an award-winning filmmaker. He made the film Safe that won an award at the Cannes Film Festival. And so, yeah, I haven't seen this film. I'm very intrigued. I mean, it's a project that's been supported, I believe, by Hyundai, you know, this car manufacturer. So I think there are various like cameras, you know, around the car, inside the car. I mean, the car is essentially one of the central characters in the film. And so, yeah, it's been released here. And I think, you know, with I mean, you got one of the exhibitors, CGV, which are, you know, very keen on trying to promote their, you know, premium formats. And this seems like a film that can really kind of exploit that. And so, yeah, I mean, Son Seok-gu is clearly trying to promote this film, you know, through social media platforms and really get the words out there. And I'm very intrigued to see it. And clearly it's already made an impression, both here and in Korea and overseas.
Mm-hmm. And appears not only movies, but individual Korean actors are also receiving offers from Hollywood. You know, Yo-jong made history as the first Korean actor to play a significant role in the Star Wars series. While renowned actress Kim Tae-hee and Squid Game star Park Hae-soo, they are also venturing into Hollywood. So what is behind their active entry into the Tinseltown, and in your view, what are some remaining challenges?
I mean, I suppose we have to kind of put this down to the increased visibility of Korean content on the global stage, you know, following the success of Parasite at the Cannes Film Festival and the Academy Awards. And of course, Squid Game is the most successful, still the most successful Netflix content. But there have been, this is also not a new thing. There have been a lot of Korean actors that have been entering into Hollywood for years. If I'm not mistaken, there was Park Jung-hoon, you know, years ago. Park Hoon-jung years ago was in a Jonathan Demme films about 20 years ago, The Truth About Charlie. But more significant names include, of course, Bae Joon-ho, who was in a lot of films for the Wachowskis, including Cloud Atlas, Sense8, Jupiter Ascending. More recently, she was in the Zack Snyder double bill of the Rebel Moon sci-fi films on Netflix. And of course, Lee Byung-hun being in films like G.I. Joe, Magnificent Seven. There was the Terminator Genesis film. And I think he's also in an upcoming Netflix film called, I believe in a thing called Love. I mean, you mentioned Star Wars. Obviously, it's very big that Yo-jong is in Star Wars, and I know he worked really, really hard to improve his English for it. But we've also had some Korean actors already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, very, very popular in Korea, whereas Star Wars not so popular in Korea. We had Ma Dong-seok in the Eternals, Park Seo-joon in the Marvels. Unfortunately, those were not among the most well-received Marvel films, but I'm sure we'll see, hopefully, both of them them in future Hollywood projects. We've got Jung Ho-yeon from Squid Game, all these Squid Game people in stuff, and she is in rather the Alfonso Cuarón series Disclaimer for Apple TV Plus, which should be coming out soon. Blackpink, huge K-pop, internationally renowned K-pop outfit. Two of their members have been in HBO series. Jennie was in The Idol, which premiered at Cannes last year, I think, and then Lisa is in the upcoming third season of The White Lotus. There's a lot of pride, I think, in seeing kind of Korean performers, Korean industry people, not just being recognized with awards, but actually being invited to participate in Hollywood projects. And so that's all exciting. I also kind of wonder what it means for the local industry. You know, it's great to see all these people being recognized internationally, but if they stay, off in Hollywood, and how are they going to contribute to the Korean film industry, which is actually really struggling at the moment? So I hope they kind of keep doing both things. I love how some of our favorite directors like Park Chan-wook and Bong Joon-ho, they often, they're really recognized in the West, and they do projects in Hollywood. Park Chan-wook just had The Sympathizer for HBO, and Bong Joon-ho will be returning soon with Mickey 17 for Warner Brothers. But it's always kind of one for them, one for us. So they like to kind of keep doing Korean projects as well. And I hope it'll be the same thing for these actors who are being steadily gaining more recognition in Hollywood.
All right. And Jason, before I let you go, the same question. In your view, what's behind Korean actors active entering to the Hollywood, and are there any challenges?
Yeah, no, I mean, Piers made a number of interesting points there. And we've seen a number of Korean actors. We saw Lee Byung-hun, Bae Doona, as Piers said. They've taken on quite significant roles. I think, even for someone like Lee Byung-hun, I mean, a leading role in a Hollywood film is something that's, quite challenging for him. But to his credit, he's come back to Korea and worked on Korean projects. And he seems to be focusing more on Korean projects nowadays, as opposed to international films. We'll have to see what happens, going forward for him. But yeah, I guess for the kind of new generation of younger actors who are clearly enticed by Hollywood, and understandably so. And I was thinking also in terms of K-pop stars, Piers mentioned Blackpink, but you've got BTS, who, when they come out of their military service and they finish, or if they continue
all of them finish their military
if they continue to, sing, great, but what happens if they feature in a Hollywood film? I mean, could be huge. And what kind of roles will they play? Is this going to be a supporting role, or is this going to be a leading role? So I think, that potentially is something to look forward to, or look out for going forward. And, I mean, with Lee Jung-jae in this new Star Wars series, I mean, I've been very impressed with the reaction to that. I was a little bit concerned that, it might not get the reaction that perhaps, associated with something like Squid Game, but it's got off to a great start, and he's come out very well, and so I think that's good for him, obviously, but also for the Korean performers in general as well.
Okay, thank you, Jason, and thank you, Piers. I really enjoyed our conversation this evening.
Thanks again for having me.
And that brings us to the end of this show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in next week to join our conversation. Bye for now.
Korea. Some people